Welcome to Women's Human Rights Campaign Feminist Question Time. It's brought to you by Women's Human Rights Campaign, which is an international feminist organisation that promotes women's human rights. The main focus is on defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. You can find more information on the website womensdeclaration.com, where you will find our declaration on women's sex-based rights. This declaration has been signed by 14,818 people from 127 countries and is supported by 307 organisations. If you're on the website, you can click on the organisations to get their websites, to get through to their websites, and you'll be able to see the wonderful range of groups that have signed up to the declaration. We're going to start off with hearing from Marie-Claire Faray. She is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Marie-Claire is a researcher and activist on human security, gender inequality, and women's rights in Africa, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's a member of Common Cause UK, Democratic Republic of Congo, a platform of Congolese women, and member of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF. So thank you so much, Marie-Claire, and over to you.
I'm going to be speaking as a Congolese woman, and also my presentation today will focus on Black African women. But as you know, Black African women are from different places, not only from the diaspora, from Africa, but also from the diaspora. And I will try to speak about peace and security of Black African women while addressing race, social class, sex, and gender, cultural identity. As most of you know, Africa is not a country, it's a continent. And Africa has got myriad of culture and population, thousands of language. But one thing that we don't often hear from Africa is the story from African women, because a lot of the story that coming out of Africa has been written not only by men, but also by white men. So a lot of the story from African women have been silenced. So feminism has often had a connotation as being a Western ideology, whereas we all know that the belief in feminism is actually the belief in social, political, and economic equality for all sexes. And actually, if we look at pre-colonial Africa, we had also different legal frameworks, such as the Mandan Charter from the Mali Empire, where the notion of equality was already in some of our pre-colonial era. And we also have different ideologies, such as the Ubuntu ideology, where we know exactly that women such as Kimpa Vita, where women who were actually looking at our humanity first, when they were fighting against slavery and when they were fighting against the colonialism. So really, we've had African women who have always been part of the independence, the struggle for the freedom of human from oppression in Africa. And there's many of them throughout the books, and a lot of them are also coming. We've got new African women who are there, who are Black feminists from the continent. But we cannot forget also some of the Black women from the Caribbean and America who have actually shaped feminism and brought in different ideology, such as the intersectionality, where we talk about feminism for everyone. And we are very inclusive and acknowledge that women and men are all under pressure from stereotype, facing multiple forms of inequality due to toxic masculinity. And so we actually look at each other when we're looking at the Ubuntu philosophy of Africa as I am because you are. And this is actually an inclusive approach of looking at equality and our common humanity. So we are all interconnected, and one of the things that connect all of us as our humanity is actually this programmation of conception, birth, growth, and development, and the decline and death, because we all go through this process, which is a biological process. All human beings go through this process, and it is very important for us to recognize this biological process, which enable us to look at our common our common reality. So one of the things that it's important is, even though we look at our common reality, the gender integrated approach, the feminism, should not be used to undermine our biological reality. So, because most of the time, the wider global feminist talk about intersectionality and looking at all type of issue that we can face as human being. When we look at gender, we talk about, you know, including everybody. However, we should not find our biological reality, which is really our sex, and to silence and exclude other people. So one of the things that is very important for me to discuss today is actually the link that there is, that Black women face when we have to kind of navigate between different identity. Sexism, racism are faces of the same coins. And as Black women, we are faced with different kind of identity. Not only we have to face up with race, we have to face up with our sex, we also have to face sometimes our geographic environment. Some of us have to face the culture, some of us have to face the language, the economic, the income, the social class. So there are a lot of things that Black women go through that are often not recognized. And one of the things that we often face when we are in an environment with other feminists is the racism. And one key issue that we have when we talk about sexism and racism is that we often not looking at biology. Right now, there is all this issue about gender identity. How can we look at gender identity without looking at our biology? And it's the same thing when we're looking at race. We also have to look at our biology, because today, as a Black woman, if I go somewhere and I say that I love classical music, or I love dressing up in trousers, or dressing up in a way that is kind of more culturally Western, that doesn't mean that I become a white woman. No, as I'm still going to be, you know, pigmented, and I'm still going to have my biological, how can I say it, my biological characteristic, you know. So I don't understand sometimes when we talk about gender and we are not looking at female as a biological reality. It's really a big problem, because for a couple of years now, I've been doing some work with women, refugee women, diaspora refugee women, through WILPF and Common Cause UK, where a lot of them come from conflict zone. And as you know, in places like the Congo, rape has been used as a tool of war. And there's, in the Congo has a history of dehumanization since colonization, with the Belgian King Leopold, you know, using the Congo as his property. So a lot of the Congolese were enslaved and they were mistreated. And actually the situation of women in Congo went from full participation during the pre-colonial era to marginalization and exclusion. So the Congolese women and African women in general who have faced slavery and colonization have been dehumanized. And actually, during the training that I do with the refugee women, we look at identifying the different form of violence against women and understanding the legal framework, because through this dehumanization, a lot of a lot of the human rights women have lost actually their humanity. And what I've noticed also is that when we talk about the legal framework, because a lot of the women come from area where male violence is really the norm, has been instrumentalized through capitalism, you know, instrumentalizing masculinity and patriarchy for exploitation of not only women, but of human and natural resources. A lot of the women have been dehumanized in a sense where they don't even know their reproductive organs and understanding their reproductive system. So because of ignorance, lack of education, lack of infrastructure, so there is a lot of ignorance. So one of the things that we've seen in the Congo, for instance, is that the rate of sexual violence was, because Congo was labeled as the capital of rape, without explaining exactly what was going on. So we've done a lot of study to demonstrate that the rate of sexual violence was linked to the war, and was also linked to the militarization of the Congo, because a lot of people were just looking at it as a cultural issue without, you know, separating it from the war and separating it from the whole history of neocolonialization and the militarization of the country. So one of the things that we saw when I was training the women, we've also looked at physical integrity of women that has been breached during in different parts of Africa, and not only in Congo, but in part of Africa where female genital mutilation is practiced. And so this structure here, when I use it during the training, the women are very much impressed, because some of them didn't realize that their reproductive organ was really complex. And it is very important for them to realize that some of the things that are stereotyping them is actually the ignorance of their physiology as women. But for instance, some women and men don't understand that the fluidity of women is very important for the reproduction and for the transport of male gametes to reach the ovaries. So there is a lot of misconception that actually creates the stereotyping. And this image here, I just wanted to show you, it's a little bit in French, but it's just to explain a little bit some of the training that I provide in Congo to women, just to explain a bit about the secretion, that there are different forms of secretion that women don't know, because all of the secretion are seen as dirty, whereas, you know, things like the menstruation and the different type of secretion, the auto cleaning of their vagina, and so things like that they don't understand, but also it is used to stereotype women and to exclude them from different settings. So ignorance has caused a lot of violence, psychological violence. So the ignorance of the women reproductive organ has caused a lot of violence, institutional violence, which actually are crime now under all this legal framework that we have, that a lot of African countries have signed up to, but they are not kind of implementing some of those legal frameworks. So as you know, CEDAW actually reaffirmed the state obligation to women's sex-based rights. And we know that in the CEDAW, the word sex is used to explain that the state has an obligation for women's sex-based rights. And also the Maputo Protocol here mentioned in its preamble that it reaffirmed the obligation of state to women's sex-based rights. Unfortunately, all this today, if we are looking at many of these African countries, they've made a lot of reservation in legal instruments, such as the Maputo Protocol or CEDAW. Some of those reservations are linked to the women's sex-based right to control women and to control girls, and to continue to oppress some of those girls. So today, as we are seeking peace, African women are seeking peace and security while addressing all these different identity and all these different characteristics and all these multiple factors. We have to look at also what are the priorities. When we look at the priority for African women, first of all, is to exist, to exist. And sometimes we face discrimination according to our sex. Really, the fact that all these stereotyping, not only with regard to sex, but with regard to race, have really put us in a frame where we live inequality on a daily basis and every time. And it's actually very important to consider all these factors that are creating violence to our lives. So through ignorance of our biological reality, whether it is sex or it is our biology, individuals participate in atrocity from an inability and critically examine blind allegiance to ideology and stereotype that provide a sense of meaning, comfort in a lonely and alienating world. The only additional thing is I want to say that I have started some training in 2016, training women and men on sex equality using biology and explaining exactly the role of reproductive organs and looking at legal framework and all this. And the return has been really, really fantastic. Not only here in the UK diaspora, where I'm training Afro women from coming from Africa, but also in the DRC, where I started the program in 2016. And it's actually showing that training just on gender equality without explaining the biological reality is really a problem. So, and when you put in the biological reality, you kind of look at critical analysis. People have the time to think about their behavior and how they have been portraying women and why they were stereotyping, and it is actually working. So that's what I wanted to say.